we were leaving too much potential on the table. And 1 year later, we still got work to do.
Governor Wes Moore addresses the people of Maryland. We're live in Annapolis breaking down his State of the State address. Plus, we ask Mayor Brandon Scott how he's supporting new juvenile crime bills with state leaders set to discuss how they'll move forward. Then Cecil County school leaders say they have a budget crisis like other counties across Maryland. Why they say they can't afford the cost to educate your children.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 4.
A change is happening. And today, the state of our state, it is strong.
Governor Wes Moore giving his State of the State address today. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mary Bubala.
And I'm Kai Jackson. The governor addressed a large variety of topics and includes education, housing, expansion, and also public safety. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost joins us live from the State House with the biggest takeaways from the State of the State and how Republican lawmakers are reacting. Mackenzie?
Yeah, Mary Kai, the governor spoke today for just shy of 45 minutes, and he made it clear that public safety remains a top priority in this administration. Now, during this State of the State address, the governor is calling for more investments in accountability as well as community supports in the conversation surrounding public safety. He argues that there does not need to be a choice between those two. On the flip side of that, though, Republicans argue that there is not a divide and that both can happen, but the Republicans argue that there needs to be more accountability. But throughout the speech, the governor also sprinkled in more conversations about partnerships, and it's that push for more collaboration that has some GOP leaders hopeful.
We need to move beyond the simplicity of how pundits talk about public safety and move towards a complexity of how people experience public safety. We will listen to states' attorneys and we will listen to the public defenders.
Do you agree that there is a false choice?
I don't think so. I think that's a choice made by the advocates to keep getting softer on crime.
We hear some of the words that we've talked about. We don't see that in his legislation, but I think that the message is getting around here that we really have to do something meaningful when it comes to public safety.
Now, the governor also says he's going to unveil the state's 3-year plan tomorrow. We expect to learn more details at some point on Thursday. And it's also shaping up to be another busy day here tomorrow in Annapolis because there will be the first bill hearing for the top Democrats' plan to curb youth violence. Kai?
Yeah, Mackenzie, the governor also talked about his push for expanding housing. What are we learning in there?
Yeah, that's part of the governor's push for economic development, and housing is really one of the items at the top of the wish list for the governor during this legislative session. Right now, it's looking like there will be a three-pronged approach. The first two really centering on expanding housing opportunities and expanding developments, and the third really centers around renters and their rights, especially when we're talking about evictions. And it's that renters' rights aspect of this proposal that is giving some GOP lawmakers pause. They argue that really could negatively impact future investments.
Last year, we got Maryland's economy moving. We will continue to build on our progress. We will cut red tape so that Maryland is the friendliest state in the nation to start and build a business.
We're not talking about people, hey, I lost my job, I'm down for a month, I'm disabled, I have a little bit of a problem. We're talking about people who simply say, I can't afford to live here. I think that his bill probably goes a little too far.
Now, with housing shaping up to be one of the other big topics during this legislative session, in addition to public safety, we'll be sure to keep our eyes on these plans as they evolve. We're live in the State House. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. Well, when it comes to public safety, Governor Moore has been a longtime supporter of the head of the Department of Juvenile Services, Vincent Schiraldi, but his views have been seen as controversial. He has long been an opponent of parole and probation, outlining his views in his latest book. He has also made public comments about juveniles, saying their brains aren't fully developed until age 25, and so they shouldn't be introduced into the adult criminal justice system until that age.
These views are raising questions about a potential clash of ideas between the Democratic Juvenile Crime Plan and the Department of Juvenile Services. Tomorrow, state lawmakers will gather for another hearing surrounding that comprehensive juvenile crime plan proposed by Democrats. That plan would extend probation for young offenders, which goes against Secretary Schiraldi's beliefs. Democrats say it's to ensure juveniles have time to complete
or the Kerwin plan. They're asking the county for more.
We're fast forwarding into the position of where, the actual bills are coming due.
While Lawson says the Kerwin plan isn't the sole reason for the shortfall, that money still has to be made up somewhere.
Blueprint, to be honest, is aspirational. It does exert some financial pressures with trying to determine how we're going to pay for those issues again, which aren't necessarily prescribed.
We're struggling with Kerwin.
It was a gut punch.
With Kerwin impacting schools across the state, Cecil County isn't the only school system feeling the strain, meaning more counties could have to pick up the tab.
This has become a very big fiscal challenge.
I've got counties on the Eastern Shore that have said for the entire time since Kerwin has been passed that they cannot afford it.
While Lawson says long-term,
I think long-term it's a good thing that eventually we're going to work through.
Other state and local leaders are sounding the alarm.
I think I speak for all of our county executives in saying that our people can't deal with the financial impact that the Kerwin as it stands is placed upon our taxpayers and our citizens.
Now, some county leaders like Bob Castley in Harford County have called on the General Assembly to make adjustments to the Kerwin plan. Christopher Summers with the Maryland Public Policy Institute even says the plan should be paused. But in the meantime, Cecil County School Board members will have another meeting tonight where they'll talk about possible budget cuts coming next year. Live in Elkton, Jessica Babb, Fox 45 News.
Still ahead tonight, millions of tax dollars meant for Maryland school children may be going unused. Project Baltimore looks into why this could be a bigger problem down the road.
I'm Christine Frizzau in Washington, where families of Israeli hostages spent the day. What they're asking for and what we're learning about a potential deal to bring them home.
Nice looking day so far. We've got a nice warm up coming too, already hitting the 50s today. We're going to see those temperatures soar even higher as we go into the next few days. But also we're tracking some weekend showers and a stormier pattern to set up. Is that going to mean rain or winter weather is coming our way? We'll detail it out coming up.
Fox 45 News, winner of 16 2022 Regional Emmy Awards, more than all other Baltimore news stations combined.
Tonight, the fate of Israeli hostages hangs in the balance 4 months after they were kidnapped by Hamas. as top White House officials continue to negotiate for their release. Some tragic news that at least 1 in 5 is already dead. Here's national correspondent Christine Frizzao.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
On Capitol Hill, a reminder of the agony that remains reality for more than 100 families.
She's our sunshine.
The parents of 23-year-old Romy Gonen joining other hostage families to ask for more to be done to bring them home. Many revealing they've been kept in the dark by their own government.
We don't know if our son is still alive. We didn't get anything from the Israeli intelligence for more than 70 days.
Lawmakers vowing to keep the pressure on.
The hostages must be released.
This week, a tragic revelation that of the 136 hostages still being held in Gaza, dozens are dead or feared dead.
We've given information to 31 families of hostages who are no longer alive, and we determined their death.
The release of their remains and of the others is at the center of negotiations between Secretary of State Antony Blinken and the leaders of Qatar, Egypt, as well as Israel and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. A deal that reportedly includes a pause in the war, the release of Israeli hostages and Palestinians held in Israeli jails, and the allowance that more food, water, medicine, and supplies be brought into Gaza.
There's a lot of work to be done, but we are very much focused on doing that work and hopefully being able to resume the release of hostages that was interrupted so many months ago.
For now, that work will continue as Israel has just rejected the latest counteroffer from Hamas. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying there is no solution besides total victory, as many hostage families worry continued war means a diminished chance of their loved ones ever coming home. I'm Christine Frizzao reporting.
Well, as the U.S. struggles to get more than $17 billion approved in aid to Israel, it begs the question, how much has the U.S. already given? According to the Council on Foreign Relations, Israel has been the largest recipient of U.S. foreign aid since its founding. From 1946 to 2023, Israel has received about $300 billion in total economic and military aid. Nearly all aid goes to Israel's military, which must use it to purchase American-made military equipment. The U.S. has already agreed to give Israel $4 billion annually through 2028. New tonight, rescue efforts are underway after a missing military helicopter was located in the mountains outside of San Diego. Officials have not yet commented on the chopper's condition. 5 soldiers were on board. Their condition not known yet. The helicopter was reported overdue from its training at around 1 a.m. The area is dealing with snowy conditions, making it hard to reach the site on ground. The National Weather Service called for upwards of 10 inches of snow in the mountains.
We're out in a remote area right now. We're in rugged terrain, so they have ropes, any type of first aid equipment, medical equipment that they're going to need to treat any victims that they find. They've got stuff to stay warm in cold weather, so they're fully outfitted and fully prepared.
The Super Stallion is the military's largest and heaviest helicopter. It's capable of moving troops and equipment over rugged terrain and bad weather. It's not yet clear what went wrong.
I know it seems like it's a world away. That side of the country, believe it or not, has impacts here with what systems they get will eventually and oftentimes head to the east and bring us weather here. So let's talk about what's going on. We have been very, very fortunate. It's been quiet, it has been calm, and it's actually been fairly cool. But today, a little bit more of an exception. We're reaching the 50s in many areas here, and we're going to continue to see the mercury rising as we head into the next several days. So tonight shouldn't be as chilly. We're just going to step up the temperatures little by little as we move into the next couple of days. And I think by the end of this, once we get to the end of it, you're going to like at least the temperatures that we have to show you. All right, so 30s as we move through your Thursday morning, but mid-50s, a few passing clouds. It's not going to be a bad day at all. And then even as we get a little bit later into your Friday, we could be getting close to 60 This is trying to put mid-60s. That may be a little bit bullish, but either way, I think we can be optimistic and say upper 50s to around 60 degrees, and that'll be your Friday. So a good start to the weekend. Is it going to be a good finish? Well, if you look at just the temperatures, you would probably say yes. We are going to be well above our average high on Saturday, Sunday, and it continues, but we start to see our temperatures cooling back down again as we get into early next week. 62 sounds wonderful, doesn't it? But is that the way it's going to end up? That's a good question. Now, here's what's going on. So much activity out to our west. Storm systems really firing up, many of them coming in off the Pacific. One is eventually going to make its way to us here. That energy is really going to pop things up in our rain chances, and we'll start to see a lot of activity. In the meantime, that high pressure is just going to be exiting. Here's Friday. So far, so good. We're dry. This storm system is just going to fizzle out, so it's not going to bring us much, but the one just behind it will bring us a chance, our first chance for some rainfall. As we move into Saturday, this looks fairly light, not high impact, but still there's going to be some rain showers in the vicinity, and that could last a bit into your Sunday. But better rain chances with a bigger storm system that's going to be developing and heading our direction. That's going to be early next week. Now, we're more confident that this storm is going to happen. The exact track is still unknown, but at the very least, you can expect that we are going to have some impacts as we move into early next week. The timing of this is still very much something we have to consider here, because some of our data is showing it coming in on Monday, others next Tuesday. So we'll have to see, but here are the takeaways. Early next week, storm system is likely, that bigger one that I showed you. The exact timing and impacts are still uncertain, and the rainy, windy conditions are still going to be pretty likely here, but snow right now is not expected, just not out of the question either. All right, so 7-day forecast. Again, Saturday's our next chance of rain. Looks like some showers will be in the area. By the way, come see me at the Baltimore Expo. I'll be out there that Saturday. But next week, early next week's when things are going to get busy, but rain and wind become likely either Monday or Tuesday.
Coming up after the break, the Super Bowl is this Sunday. The teams are getting ready. We take you to Las Vegas with preparations underway and a live report. Plus, the verdict is in for Marilyn Mosby's second federal trial. Fox 45 News speaking to a legal expert on what comes next. Well, fans are flocking the streets of Las Vegas ahead of Super Bowl 58 on Sunday. Brian Cheney from our Sinclair sister station joins us live from Vegas with all of the excitement. It looks so beautiful out there, Brian.
You know, Mary, it wasn't like this yesterday. I mean, downpour. So things are changing here as we get ahead towards Super Bowl Sunday. I dreaded this conversation, by the way, with last weekend's result here with you guys in Baltimore. But here we are, Niners Chiefs. A lot of fans are now filling the strip ahead of the big game. Some of them even have tickets to the big game. Just days away from Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas, Chiefs and 49ers fans alike are soaking it in.
We waited our whole lives to see them win a Super Bowl, and it doesn't get old.
Still enjoying their Super Bowl 54 win over the Niners. So you didn't have to pay for your tickets. These Chiefs fans made the trip from KC and will be at the game on Sunday.
We won the trip to Vegas, and they were advertising that the weekend of the Super Bowl would be free. And we decided to take a gamble on it and see if the Chiefs would be here, and yay.
Would you have come if you had to shell out $5,000 a ticket?
No, probably not.
I might have come, but maybe not to the game.
We're here for the Super Bowl festivities for the week.
Like these 49ers fans from San Fran. Did you look at ticket prices for the Super Bowl?
I did.
And you stopped there?
I sure did.
Not heading to Allegiant Stadium on Sunday, but they did witness the miraculous NFC Championship win in person last week.
Because I looked at ticket prices about a month ago, and they were more like between $4,500 to $6,000. But the $4,500 tickets were like all the way at the top, nosebleed seats. I'm like, who's going to pay that?
It's no secret Super Bowl tickets are beyond pricey for most. But it's also a reminder that while the game lives on, times have changed. Mike Golick was a defensive tackle in the league for nearly a decade. What do you make of ticket prices for the average fan?
Well, I mean, listen, they've always been priced out. I mean, when I first got in the league back in '85, I remember when if you don't make the Super Bowl, you get to buy tickets at face value. I bought my tickets in '85 at face value for $75.
Well, Mike always said the tickets for the Super Bowl, they're for a different lifestyle normally, and he equated kind of the difference and the changes over the years to the price of a cup of coffee. It was a great conversation. Anyway, let's talk about ticket prices now. I looked at CT Hub. They were about $5,000 on the low end yesterday. They're now at a minimum of $6,000 for the lowest price seat at Allegiant Stadium. Live in Las Vegas, I'm Brian Cheney. Mary, back to you.
Brian, thank you, which always means you're highest in the stadium when you get the lowest price tickets. Well, we want to see how you're watching the Super Bowl this year. Scan the QR code right there on your screen. It'll take you to our website where you can upload your pictures and your videos. It is all powered by Stackla. Coming up after the break, former Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby convicted on one count in her federal mortgage fraud trial. Fox 45 News hears from her ex-husband, City Council President Nick Mosby, on his involvement. Plus, the two juveniles accused of attacking a woman in Butchers Hill facing a long list of charges, but not until months after the incident, a community member weighs in on what he calls a lack of urgency.
Ms. Mosby, how do you feel about this split verdict?
Leave alone.
Ms. Mosby, are you happy with the decision to take the stand?
No comment.
Former Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby is found guilty on one of 2 counts in her federal mortgage fraud trial.
Throughout the trial, Mosby's defense team tried to convince the jury her ex-husband, City Council President Nick Mosby, hid financial information from her for years, and she didn't knowingly lie on any mortgage application.
Today, Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost pushed the City Council president on his testimony during the trial. She joins us live with his answers. Mackenzie.
Yeah, Mary and Kai, there are a lot of questions for the City Council President Nick Mosby right now. He is yet to file for re-election, but arguably the bigger question is what could happen next. While he was on the stand testifying for the defense, prosecutors made some pretty bold allegations claiming that Nick Mosby repeatedly committed perjury on his taxes. They say that that's connected to some charitable donations that Nick and Marilyn Mosby made a few years ago. Prosecutors argue they don't believe those charitable donations actually took place. So today, after the Board of Estimates meeting in which Nick Mosby does chair, we questioned him about his ability to lead and what he's going to do next.
If I could go back in time and change things, I'm not saying I'm a perfect person. I made that mistake, and we're going to move forward. So obviously the voters will have a chance to determine if what I have put forth to date in my record of service, if that speaks volumes in this upcoming election.
Are you concerned about what this means for you personally in terms of the possibility of potential charges now that what you've said on the stand?
Yeah, no, not at all. I have been transparent with this process the entire time. I mean, when the federal government came into City Hall and did what they did to publicly announce this investigation, I sat down with them at that time. Every time that they reached out, I sat down and I was willing to take the stand and be very transparent about what is taking place and where we are. Again, I don't think, I didn't expect personal taxes to rise to the level of 3 years long of investigation into every aspect of my life and where we are, but it did. It's about time to move forward. I'm glad that, this is somewhat behind us. It's been here for 3 years, right when I took office, and I look forward to continue to push forward. I think the key thing is I've showed up every single day, whether it's the Board of Estimates, whether it's City Council President presiding over the council, through a tremendous amount of adversity, and I'll continue to do so.
So right now, all signs indicate that Nick Mosby will run for re-election, but again, he has yet to file. He has until 9 o'clock Friday night to do so. We're live tonight. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. Well, let's bring in legal expert attorney Jeremy Eldridge on what comes next for Marilyn Mosby. Jeremy, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
The verdicts are in for both of her federal trials now. So what comes next and when?
Well, the immediate is going to be scheduling sentencing. So are we going to see Marilyn Mosby's attorneys ask for a not jail sentence? What is the government going to be asking for in these sentencing memorandums? Are they going to be sticking with this baseline 15 to 21 months that the perjury charge warrants? Or are they going to be asking for what are called upward departures and seeking to get a higher sentence because maybe she impeded justice while testifying or perjured herself? So there are some enhancements that the government could be looking for. That's step one. After sentencing, we're going to be looking right at an appeal. And because she's represented by the Federal Public Defender's Office, that appeal will get filed and it will be litigated.
So, Jeremy, if an appeal does happen, when could we expect that to take place?
Look, the closest thing that we have to really compare this case to has been that awkward prosecution of Kenny Ravenel, local criminal defense attorney, that has been going on for years. Now, that is such a unique situation. And in this case, we have 2 convictions that have to be appealed. One, the one from yesterday that looks very strong, would likely stay intact. And the first one may as well, but it covers that new CARES Act prosecution. And because there haven't been as many of them, what creative argument will her attorneys put forth on appeal? And that's something I'm going to keep an eye on.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is there much hope she could win on appeal for any of these 3 convictions?
Frankly, I don't think there's much hope whatsoever. But because the first prosecution was, I don't want to say a case of first impression, but certainly a newer brand of prosecution under a newer law. That's usually the best a criminal defendant can hope for, is saying that maybe this law wasn't prosecuted correctly and looking for an error there. But I don't think the appeals have much optimism.
And Jeremy, any thoughts about what City Council President Nick Mosby was saying to Mackenzie Frost when she interviewed him? He's speaking post-trial and about his own shortcomings and mistakes he made. Any thoughts about what he said and whether or not the federal government may try and prosecute him?
Well, you definitely saw a Jekyll and Hyde approach by the city council president from how he testified on direct examination at trial when Marilyn's own lawyers asked him question, and then his sort of flippant attitude on cross-examination. Now we seem back to a more contrite posture publicly. But what the question you have to be asking is even if he declares for office, is he going to make it to the election, or is the U.S. Attorney's Office, in light of his co-conspirator relationship in Marilyn's now guilty finding of defrauding the government or lying to her mortgage vendor, is he going to be prosecuted? And that's the real thing that's still sitting out there.
It almost seems inevitable because it's so public and out there. All right, Jeremy Eldridge, thank you so much for giving us your perspective tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Fox 45 News has been following the years-long legal situation surrounding Marilyn Mosby since the beginning. For our full coverage on her case, head to foxbaltimore.com.
Tomorrow, lawmakers will gather in Annapolis for a hearing surrounding Democrats' juvenile crime plan. Democrats say there needs to be more accountability for both youth offenders and the state's juvenile justice system, announcing a list of legislative priorities. And these include requiring police to provide written documentation of youth taken into custody, shortening the deadline for DJS intake decisions, strengthening staffing within DJS's ankle monitoring unit, increasing probation limits for youth offenders, and allowing children under the age of 13 to be charged with certain violent crimes currently blocked under controversial reform laws.
The push comes as Maryland sees more juveniles commit violent crimes, according to authorities who are prosecuting them with little to no consequences. That includes the attack of a Butchers Hill woman in November. Fox 45's Megan Gillen spoke to a longtime Baltimore resident on what some see as a lack of urgency from state lawmakers.
The two juveniles accused of attacking a Butchers Hill woman last November will now face a laundry list of charges. That's according to the victim, who says initially she was told the teens would face no consequences. Lifelong Baltimore resident Pastor P.M. Smith weighing in on the dramatic change.
I think that locally they're beginning to hear the cries of parents, not just victims, but parents. The 12-year-old young man, I think his mother was interviewed shortly after the occurrence, and she said, "I need help." She was begging for help because she was very concerned about the future of her young man if he's not checked in that behavior now. So I'm glad Mr. Bates and his office have gone forward. I don't think they can comment, but I don't think they should. Let's proceed.
Under a new juvenile justice reform bill introduced last week, we're talking about possible change to come from Annapolis. I can see it in your face. You think it's too little, too late, but is it at least a step in the right direction?
Too little, too late, too long. For 20 months, they've been showing up. For 20 months, they've been talking. And now the product is something like this, and the only word they can use is accountability. I think your viewing voters need to apply accountability not just to the juveniles, but to those juvenile legislators.
Fox 45 News has asked both the city state's attorney's office and DJS why charges were not issued immediately. Both say they are unable to comment on juvenile cases. I'm Megan Gillen, Fox 45 News.
Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost will be in Annapolis following every step of this year's session over the next 2 months. Keep up with our coverage on air and online at foxbaltimore.com.
Project Baltimore is sponsored by the Snyder Law Group. Don't just sue them, Snyder them.
Millions of your tax dollars intended to help children in Maryland's poorest schools are apparently not being spent.
As Project Baltimore's Chris Papps explains, that's according to a report just released by the Inspector General for Education.
The Blueprint for Maryland's Future, also known as the Kerwin Plan, pumps billions of additional dollars into public education. But now an audit by the Inspector General for Education found millions of your tax dollars are going unused. When Maryland's legislature passed the Blueprint for Maryland's Future a few years ago, it created what's known as the Concentration of Poverty Grant Program. This grant provides extra funding to schools in areas with high rates of poverty and crime. The money is intended to give students extra resources, such as health care and other social services. Maryland has 24 public school systems. The IG report only looked at 8 of them and found $12.3 million in grant money was sent to those 8 school systems, but sat unused from fiscal years 2020 to 2022. How can this happen? The report blames the Maryland Department of Education for a lack of policies and training. In other words, school systems didn't know how to spend the money or what to spend it on. The report issues a series of recommendations for MSDE, which includes improving how it monitors the Concentration of Poverty grant to ensure the funds are not misallocated. MSDE says it has already implemented some of the recommendations, and it plans to implement almost all of the rest of them. According to the IG, addressing this problem now is especially important because in the coming years, billions of additional tax dollars will go into public education as a result of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. Now, coming up on Wednesday, we're going to take a closer look at this report because if $12 million went unspent in just 8 school systems, how big of a problem is this statewide? I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
Project Baltimore wants to hear from you. Do you have a story to share about your child's education or a concern you'd like our team to investigate? Call the tip line on your screen or send an email to projectbaltimore@foxbaltimore.com. You can also find us on social media.
Coming up, as we await this Saturday's Be More Healthy Expo, we're highlighting something new this year to help educate and inform.
I'm Kayla Gaskins in Washington. Coming up, we'll unpack a top concern voters have this election cycle. It's a concern that hasn't been prominent in decades.
Well, our neck of the woods has been very quiet. We're continuing to see little to nothing to be talking about until we see what is coming our way. What is this system and what is it going to do as we head into the next few days? We're going to show you.
The 2024 presidential election is heating up, and the two main candidates, are coming under scrutiny over their handling of classified documents. When it comes to President Biden, we will soon know what happened with the probe into the classified documents found in his home and office. According to the Washington Post, after a year-long investigation, Special Counsel Robert Hur will release a report soon. A public report means no criminal charges, but it may criticize Biden or his aides of their handling of the documents. Biden denies any wrongdoing. And the investigation into former President Trump's handling of classified documents continues behind closed doors. Unlike President Biden, Trump was hit with a 37-count indictment, including counts of willful retention of national defense information. The judge in Trump's case has been making decisions favorable to Trump's defense. This trial is some time off, meaning the 2024 election could have an impact on it. If Trump were to take office before trial, he could ask the Justice Department to drop it. He, too, denies any wrongdoing. With Donald Trump in his late 70s and Joe Biden in his early 80s, a major issue for the candidates is whether either is mentally, physically up for the job. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has the story.
This week, President Biden appearing to forget the name of Hamas during a press conference.
There's been a response from the opposition, but yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas.
Days before, he appeared to mix up France's current president with one that served in the 80s and 90s.
And Mitterrand from France.
The White House asked about these concerns Tuesday.
Recently talking to a French president who died in 1996.
I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole with you, sir.
Donald Trump appears to have a significant upper hand on the issue. In a new NBC News poll, 48% of respondents said they see Trump as more competent and effective than Biden. Only 32% reported Biden was more competent and effective than Trump, a 16-point difference. In a separate question, 42% of those polled said Donald Trump was the better of the two when it comes to having the necessary mental and physical health to be president. Only 23% chose Biden. 28% said neither one was mentally or physically fit to serve. Opponents zeroing in. Referring to Biden, Democratic challenger Dean Phillips tweeting, "Shame on all of you pretending everything is okay." Critics also piling on Trump for repeatedly mixing up Nikki Haley with Nancy Pelosi.
Nikki Haley is in charge of security. We offered her 10,000 people.
Haley launching this attack ad.
The ranting and raving, and he's getting older.
Following up with a skit on SNL.
Or 6 cents, remember that one? I see dead people.
Yeah, that's what voters will say if they see you and Joe on the ballot. Trump challenging Biden to both physical and mental competency test, saying he already took a cognitive test and aced it. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
That brings us to our national question of the day. Who would be better at being competent and effective as president? Joe Biden or Donald Trump? To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com and click on the Polls tab. In breaking news, Fox 45 News is learning Marilyn Mosby will be sentenced May 23rd. The order from the judge comes one day after the former city state's attorney was found guilty of 1 count of mortgage fraud. She was found guilty of 2 counts of perjury in November. She's expected to be sentenced for all 3 convictions during that sentencing hearing. The Be More Healthy Expo is this Saturday, and new this year is a health equity zone to connect and educate the community about certain health conditions that impact people of color. Today on Fox 45 Morning News, the president and CEO of Associated Black Charities joined us to discuss the resources available.
We were so excited at the opportunity to partner this year because I believe for the first time ever it's in February, which is Black History Month. And so we used that opportunity to talk to the organizers about what it would look like to have a health equity zone, to really focus on health equity, to really be intentional about providing resources for communities that typically aren't at the forefront of these conversations. And so we used our partnership to bring forward some of our patient advocacy partners that'll be in the health equity zone with Associated Black Charities to talk about diseases that disproportionately affect Black people.
The Be More Healthy Expo is Saturday from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. at the Convention Center downtown. The free event includes health screenings, cooking, and dance demonstrations, And you have a chance to meet your favorite Fox 45 news personalities, including our new chief meteorologist, Gerard Jabali.
My first Be More Healthy Expo. I hope to see you out there. I'll be out there till around noon. So you got to come early. Early birds get the worm, and you'll be able to try out this thing that I'm standing in front of, the weather map. This is a big old green screen. You can't see it obviously from home that it's green, but it is, and you'll be able to try it out. I hear it's a lot of fun. I've done it a couple times. So moving into the night, it's going to be another chilly one. I don't think we'll be quite as cold as we were last night. Some places dipped into the mid-20s. We're kind of dialing up the temperatures a little bit. 50s on tap for tomorrow, a few wisps of clouds. This has been the easiest weather ever to handle if you just have some light jackets on if you're out and about. All right, so we're going to be seeing our temperatures continuing to rise. We could soar near 60 degrees as we head into Friday. I think Saturday will be the better chance at seeing some of those 60s around, but we're going to also start seeing our rain chances coming up. Now, the first system that we can actually see to our west is way over here. It's been bringing tons of mountain snow, now some rain to the Plains states. This is marching to the east. By the time it gets here, it may not be much, but there's going to be several more systems trying to kind of come right behind it and bring us our next chance for rainfall. So it's high pressure that's been in control, keeping us dry, keeping us a little bit cooler, but we're about to see a return to southerly winds, warming things up. There's that system. Watch what happens. It kind of falls apart. But the next one's going to bring in a little bit more moisture here. So as we get into Saturday, we have our next chance for some rainfall. I was hoping that this one would hold off a little bit so we had at least a dry weekend, but it looks like it's going to be a little bit of a rainfall around, but not necessarily a full washout. That's the good news. All right, so that's Saturday, Sunday, just a slight chance, but better chance as we move into early next week. So pay attention. This is the bigger one. This one's going to be headed into our area. It will bring at least, at the very least, a good shot at rainfall and some very gusty winds as it moves through. Notice the cold air just out of reach. Now, a slight shift in this track could put us in that cold enough air, and we may squeeze out a few snowflakes here. That is on the table, but not a likelihood right now. So these are the takeaways. We are pretty confident there's going to be an early weak storm system tracking across our area. The exact timing and impacts are still very uncertain because it all depends on the track. But at the very least, you can expect some rainy and windy conditions as this system goes by. Snow is not expected right now, but it's not out of the question. The data's been all over the place on this. We'll keep close eyes on that. If that changes, you bet we're going to let you know. You can also count that later into the next week and beyond. We could be in much cooler temperatures around the area, maybe below the average. We have been very lucky so far to be above average, but not anymore. All right, so 7-day forecast now. Warming up, upper 50s, I think, are at least a likelihood on Friday. Could touch 60 in places. If not, I think Saturday is a good chance for that. And then we are going to see our next storm system. Whether it arrives on Monday or Tuesday is still yet to be seen. We've got to find that out. But as you can see, we're leaving the chances of rain in for there and some windy conditions as well.
All right, Gerard, thank you. Coming up at 5 o'clock, a Valentine's Day campaign turning heads. We take a look at one animal shelter's New to Your Ex event. Ouch. But first, the big game is 4 days away. We take a look at the players in this year's Puppy Bowl.
The road to the big game is sponsored by Royal Farms.
Here's a live look from Las Vegas right now. The big game between Kansas City and San Francisco is 4 days away, and something exciting to look forward to is the 20th annual Puppy Bowl. Cuteness Overload is again taking over the big screen on Animal Planet's Puppy Bowl. Teams Rough and Fluff will face off this Sunday before the big game. The game features more than 130 rescue pups, all looking for forever homes. Some of this year's MVPs include Cronut, Patrick Mabones, Guy Ferrari, Beignet, and much more. Gerard, can you top that?
No. Although I'm all about Team Terrier. We used to have a whole bunch of little Yorkies. So, oh man, that's going to be fun. Although the game is going to be pretty interesting too. And I hear there's going to be a really cool trailer for a movie that I'm going to be really interested in, the sequel to Twister. Okay, we'll see how that's going to shape up. Hey, yeah, this weekend. So 60s possible by Saturday, 50s on Sunday. The chances of rain are in there, not a washout. Better chances to see that on Monday and Tuesday, though, okay?
Thank you. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock, officials in Washington, D.C. say they're seeing a nearly 560% increase in carjackings. The latest victims and the ties one has to former President Donald Trump. Governor Wes Moore gives his second State of the State address. We'll have a live report from Annapolis with takeaways.
We will be supportive, and there will be representation from either myself directly or the city tomorrow.
Mayor Brandon Scott signals support for Democrats' juvenile crime legislation, why his support marks a shift in his crime stance. Governor Wes Moore gives his State of the State address, the key takeaways and how Republican leaders are reacting.
And Cecil County Schools sounding the alarm over this year's budget. Their concerns with the Kerwin plan and why they aren't the only county feeling the strain.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 5.
We are following breaking news. Fox 45 News just learning Marilyn Mosby will be sentenced on May 23rd. The order from the judge comes one day after the former city state's attorney was found guilty of 1 count of mortgage fraud. She was found guilty of 2 counts of perjury in November. She is expected to be sentenced for all 3 convictions during that sentencing hearing in May.
A change is happening. And today, the state of our state, it is strong.
Governor Wes Moore giving his State of the State address. The governor addressing a large variety of topics, including education and public safety. Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Bubala. Thanks for staying with us.
I'm Kai Jackson. Much more in the governor's address in a few minutes. It comes as state lawmakers get ready to gather tomorrow in Annapolis for a hearing surrounding Democrats' comprehensive juvenile crime plan.
The plan promises tougher consequences for young offenders and more accountability within the Department of Juvenile Services.
It would increase probation and require police to provide written documentation of youth taken into custody.
It also outlines changes for the Department of Juvenile Services, including a shorter deadline for intake decisions and more staff within the ankle monitoring unit.
The bill would change a portion of the current juvenile crime code that now says children under 13 can't be charged with certain crimes. Among those are all firearm-related offenses, car thefts, sexual assaults, and animal abuse.
Among those planning to attend tomorrow's hearing, Mayor Brandon Scott says Baltimore City will be sending a representative as a sign of support.
But the mayor's endorsement of the bill is in contrast with the types of crime legislation he's backed in the past.
Today, Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor live after pressing the mayor on what's causing him to do somewhat of a shift on a tougher crime stance on crime. Rebecca?
Mary and Kai, it's rare that we hear Mayor Scott calling for harsher consequences, but ahead of the May primary election, political analyst John Deedy says it's not at all unusual to see elected officials pandering to public opinion.
As juvenile crime continues to soar across the state,
We are proud to partner with the legislature on this bill.
a new bill focused on accountability for the state's juvenile justice system and a crackdown on consequences for young offenders set to take center stage in Annapolis Thursday.
We will be supportive, and there will be representation from either myself directly or the city tomorrow.
Pledging to fully back the plan, Mayor Brandon Scott seemingly shifting his stance when it comes to tough on crime legislation.
McCrae is here. You're up.
Last year, Mayor Scott nowhere to be found as City State's Attorney Ivan Bates pushed lawmakers for stronger penalties for certain gun crimes, a measure that narrowly passed.
You have to hold them accountable.
Scott also silent as longtime legislation aimed at addressing repeat violent offenders and bolstering the charge for stealing a gun from a misdemeanor to a felony failed to pass year after year.
We've seen previous tough on crime measures make their way through Annapolis in the past that you've not been in support of. So
You can try to doctor this in any way that you can. We are supportive of anything that's going to actually impact reducing violence in the city, not just kowtowing to fear-mongering and right-wing talking points.
The mayor claiming nothing has changed. However,
the mayor is definitely shifting from a lot of things he said when he ran the first time and over the last couple years. What he has generally supported is some of the things that Marilyn Mosby enunciated as far as, not arresting people on petty type of things.
According to political analyst John Deedy, the mayor's sudden support for harsher penalties for offenders is likely motivated by the May primary, where Scott will face off with former Mayor Sheila Dixon, who at last check is leading him in the polls.
Mayor Scott is in a tough re-election year, and there's a perception that Sheila Dixon will be tougher on crime because while she was mayor, the crime rates were lower.
For the first time in 9 straight years, Baltimore City finally falling below 300 homicides in 2023, a 20% decrease from the prior year. Scott touting the step forward.
That reduction was the largest single-year reduction.
At the same time, quality of life crimes, including car thefts and robberies, continue to climb. And under Dixon's administration, homicides still lower than any year Mayor Scott has been in office.
I think he sees probably his own internal poll numbers. He sees the perception people have. Perception becomes reality in politics. And I think what he's doing is pivoting.
The mayor adds that he is also introducing his own legislation aimed at reforming home detention policies. This after police say a Brooklyn Homes mass shooting suspect was wearing a DJS ankle monitor at the time of his crime. Reporting live in Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Rebecca, thank you. Meanwhile, happening today in Annapolis, Governor Wes Moore delivers his second State of the State address.
Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost is live from the State House with the takeaways from the address and how Republican lawmakers are reacting. Mackenzie?
Yeah, Kai and Mary, much of the governor's roughly 45-minute speech centered around revamping the state of Maryland, including calling for a new state plan. But it's the calls for more partnerships and discussions about public safety choices that has some Republican leaders interested. Governor Wes Moore's second State of the State address.
Happy State of the State, y'all.
Starting with a loud welcome. After making his way through a sea of lawmakers and supporters, the governor taking aim at the major conversation unfolding in Maryland right now, public safety.
That we need to move beyond the simplicity of how pundits talk about public safety and move towards a complexity of how people experience public safety.
Spending time saying he doesn't believe leaders need to pick between focusing on investing in communities and accountability for criminal behavior.
To break these false choices, we need everybody at the table.
Governor Moore calling for consequences and support services as calls grow louder for action on crime, especially youth violence. Governor Moore appears to be shifting his approach. While a Secretary of Juvenile Services Department is a beacon for keeping kids out of the adult criminal justice system, Governor Moore now attempting to reach out to both sides of this debate, even going beyond political alliances.
We will listen to states' attorneys and we will listen to the public defenders.
While the governor hammers the importance of not believing in a false choice, not everyone agrees there is one to begin with. Do you agree that there is a false choice?
I don't think so. I think that's a choice made by the advocates to keep getting softer on crime.
The partnership push welcomed by some Republican leaders who say Democrats in control of the State House have historically gone too far.
You know, we hear some of the words that we've talked about. We don't see that in his legislation, but I think that the message is getting around here that we really have to do something meaningful when it comes to public safety.
For the first time in many, many years that I've been here in Annapolis, you do hear a Democratic leader, the governor, and others finally start to talk about maybe we need to pass some bills that get somewhat tougher on crime rather than softer on crime.
House Minority Leader Jason Buckle says he wants to see the follow-through to the governor's call for accountability. And while he agrees there is a need for investing in the root causes of crime to prevent it in the future, Buckle argues consequences now are critical.
The guy who breaks into your house, carjacks you, who hurts and murders your loved one today, I'm not interested in his root causes. I'm interested in accountability for his actions and getting him off the streets.
Governor Moore doubling down on his public safety legislative package, including calling for a Center for Gun Violence Prevention and Intervention.
We're up against a new challenge and we need to come up with these new solutions.
How the governor plans to thread the needle between some and his administration, the calls for criminal justice policy change from communities and lawmakers' views has yet to unfold. Now, we expect to learn more details from the governor about his new state plan at some point tomorrow. And Thursday is going to be another busy day here in Annapolis with that committee hearing scheduled to take place for a top Democrats' plan to curb juvenile crime. Kai?
Yeah, Mackenzie, we understand the governor also talked about his push for expanding housing. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Kai, housing is really at one of the top priorities for the governor during this legislative session. It continues to rise at the top of discussions. And right now it looks like there will be a 3-bill package, 2 of which center on expanding the number of housing units available across the state, as well as leveraging federal resources to boost some of that development. The third prong to this approach really focuses on renters and renters' rights, especially when it comes to evictions. And it's that latter aspect of this plan that is giving some GOP lawmakers pause, especially when it comes to developments.
Last year, we got Maryland's economy moving. We will continue to build on our progress. We will cut red tape so that Maryland is the friendliest state in the nation to start and build a business.
We're not talking about people, hey, I lost my job, I'm down for a month, I'm disabled, I have a little bit of a problem. We're talking about people who simply say, I can't afford to live here. I think that his bill probably goes a little too far.
Now, housing is rising to the top of the list as far as priorities. Public safety, education, all of these things are happening as this legislative session really gets underway, as we are now moving into February, and we continue during this 90-day session, and we'll keep an eye on everything as it unfolds. We're live at the State House. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. And Mackenzie will be in Annapolis following every step of this year's session over the next 2 months. Keep up with our coverage on air and online at foxbaltimore.com.
A budget battle is happening in Cecil County, where the school system could be short millions of dollars if the county doesn't step in.
That is especially with the Kerwin plan in place. School officials say spending state money comes with challenges.
Fox 45's Jessica Babb is live, showing us why Cecil County isn't the only school system that could be coming up short. Jessica?
Well, there's a lot that could be on the chopping block with positions and programs if the Cecil County school system can't come up with more money for next school year. When it comes to the Kerwin plan, while the superintendent says they will be getting about $3 to $4 million in state funding, he says they're limited on how they can spend that money, putting pressure on how to pay other bills. A show of support, with community members chanting, asking for more funding for Cecil County Public Schools.
We believe that we need the money to properly function as a school county.
Next school year, the Cecil County school system is projected to be $20 million short, forcing them to cut more than 150 positions and numerous programs, including JV and middle school athletics, choir, band, and AP exams.
There's a lot of frustration right now.
Superintendent Jeffrey Lawson says for the last few years, the county has been getting the minimum amount of funding from the county.
So the federal money wasn't necessarily saving us money as a school system. It allowed the county to back off their revenue stream, and subsequently they have a large fund balance.
But now, without federal pandemic funds and other spending restrictions included with the blueprint for Maryland's future or the Kerwin plan, they're asking the county for more.
We're fast forwarding into the position of where the actual bills are coming due.
While Lawson says the Kerwin plan isn't the sole reason for the shortfall, that money still has to be made up somewhere.
Blueprint, to be honest, is aspirational. It does exert some financial pressures with trying to determine how we're going to pay for those issues again, which aren't necessarily prescribed.
We're struggling with Kerwin.
It was a gut punch.
With Kerwin impacting schools across the state, Cecil County isn't the only school system feeling the strain, meaning more counties could have to pick up the tab.
This has become a very big fiscal challenge.
I've got counties on the Eastern Shore that have said for the entire time since Kerwin has been passed that they cannot afford it.
While Lawson says long-term,
I think long-term it's a good thing that eventually we're going to work through.
Other state and local leaders are sounding the alarm.
I think I speak for all of our county executives in saying that our people can't deal with the financial impact that the Kerwin as it stands is placed upon our taxpayers and our citizens.
Some county leaders like Bob Castley in Harford County have called on the General Assembly to make adjustments to the Kerwin plan. Christopher Summers with the Maryland Public Policy Institute even says the program should be paused. In the meantime, the Cecil County School Board will meet tonight to continue talking about next year's budget. Live in Elkton, Jessica Babb, Fox 45 News.
Project Baltimore is sponsored by the Snyder Law Group. Don't just sue them, Snyder them.
And while counties have been struggling to fund the blueprint, millions of dollars to help school systems in high poverty areas went unused. That's according to a new report from Maryland's Inspector General for Education. The IG report looked at 8 of Maryland's 24 public school systems. In those 8 school systems, roughly $12 million went unspent during fiscal years 2020 through 2022. The report blames the Maryland State Department of Education for a lack of policies and training. In other words, school systems didn't know how to spend the money or what to spend it on. And the IG says the money that was spent didn't make it to the classroom.
Some of the school systems were able to spend the money because they spent money to hire people to train them on how to spend the money.
Yes, if you want to say it in that way, yes, they hired individuals to train them that were a program that was managed by MSDE.
Fox 45 News at 10. Project Baltimore takes a closer look at the actions MSDE is already taking to correct the department's mistakes.
Still ahead at 5 o'clock, officials in Washington, D.C. say they're seeing a nearly 560% increase in carjackings, the latest victims, and the ties one has to former President Trump.
And Fox 45 News finds millions of tax dollars are being funneled into Baltimore nonprofits that are not in good standing with the state. Why one expert says the state's vetting process is broken.
Not bad for the evening. I say we're going to continue this trend. All this time, we have been doing great so far, but we're finally going to get to some warmer temperatures and chances for rain. We're going to tell you when those begin coming up.
Taxpayer advocates are raising concerns about the state's Thrive Academy. It is set to receive more than $4.5 million as part of Governor Wes Moore's crime plan. The nonprofit academy provides incentives to at-risk youth who stay out of trouble, including work stipends and college tuition. Organizers say it's modeled off of Baltimore's group violence reduction strategy, calling that program a huge success. But West Baltimore, where GVRS was piloted, ended last year as the deadliest district in the city. And concern now over funding for some nonprofits stretches back months. A Fox 45 News investigation in December revealed more than 30 city organizations were not in good standing with the state, but still collected $65 million in taxes. Fox 45's Jeff Abel has a closer look at the new details we're learning in this investigation.
This is such an amazing moment in time.
It was 6 months ago when the Downtown Partnership awarded a $50,000 boost grant to the women of Be More Empowered.
Fabulous, phenomenal, brilliant, and beautiful women of Be More Empowered.
Good morning. The December 14th, 2022 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order.
6 months earlier, the city's Board of Estimates approved another $25,000 for the nonprofit.
The ayes have it. The routine agenda has been adopted.
The operations director at the nonprofit is now the mayor's fiancée. The organization, which helps inner city girls, solicits donations on its website. But the problem is, Be More Empowered is not in good standing with the state of Maryland. The Secretary of State has deemed the nonprofit's account delinquent.
people, and they're not supposed to be soliciting from people if they're not in compliance with the state.
And nothing seems to be slowing the demand for more funds. Take the Baltimore Civic Fund, where donors can contribute in one click on its website. It's also a major recipient of city funds.
They received $14 million of city funds over the course of the last 15 months.
But what donors don't always see is this: its delinquent status with the state of Maryland. Nonprofits are required to regularly register their financials with the state, or the state can bar them from soliciting donations.
These laws are designed to prevent public ripoffs, and that's why the state of Maryland has the law. It's just not being followed by many of these nonprofits.
Adam Andrzejewski of OpenTheBooks.com has spent months tracking nonprofits and says 21 of the top 100 nonprofits which have received city funding are not in good standing with the state of Maryland.
The vetting process at the city has to be broken. No one's asking the basic question, are you properly registered with the state, before we cut you millions of dollars worth of city money on grants.
Earlier today, we asked the mayor's office, why has the city of Baltimore granted money to nonprofits that are out of compliance with the state of Maryland? How does the city justify giving COVID-19 relief money to organizations that are not current with their filings? And does Baltimore City plan to cease funding for the Baltimore Civic Fund? We are still waiting on a reply.
Comptroller Bill Henry, he needs to crack down. He needs to get serious about making proper registration in the state of Maryland a viable part of the vetting process before he cuts these nonprofits a check.
Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
All right, I have to admit, I was admiring the photography there. Baltimore just couldn't have looked better there with those drone shots. Talking about that, all right, we have a beautiful city, and it's been a beautiful view that we've had across the area, but this is not going to last much longer. We're still in the clear side of things on the satellite picture, but as you can tell, look out to the west. We've got storm systems out there, and one of them is going to track its way. In fact, several of them are going to track this way. We'll take you through it. First, we're not going to have to deal with any rainfall for at least the next day or so. So here we are for your Thursday, reaching up to around 55 degrees, comfortable. We're well above our average, around 45. And as we head into Friday, even warmer. We'll likely get near the 60-degree mark. This is trying to show low to mid-60s. That may be a little bit on the warm side, but no worries. We might even touch 60 plus as we get a little bit later into the pattern. We're talking maybe on Saturday. All right, so high pressure is going to exit. One system moving in, the one that you just saw, is not going to make it here in one piece. It's going to fall apart, but the one behind it could bring us a chance for a little bit of light rainfall, but a bigger one is likely to develop down here. This is later into really early next week. So much of the data is not sure exactly what day it's going to arrive, either Monday or Tuesday, but we're more confident that it's going to happen, and we were likely going to at least see some rain, possibly some wind out of this. So this is what we're thinking right now. An early week storm system likely. The exact timing impact still a little bit uncertain. Clearly, we still have to figure out what day it's going to hit, but rainy, windy conditions are at least likely. Snow is not out of the question right now, but we are not putting it really high likelihood. So not expected at this time, but of course things can change a little bit, so keep it right here. Stay tuned. So here's our first chance of rain on Saturday, Sunday. We'll keep a small chance in there, but better chances. We're going to likely raise the chances in lower one, depending on which day that storm system decides to hit, and it'll bring some wind with it. Again, so far we're going to keep it at least without any snowfall in the forecast for now, but definitely going to be cooler next week too as well.
Well, still ahead, Fox 45 News continues to follow the aftermath of Marilyn Mosby's federal trial. We are pressing her ex-husband, City Council President Nick Mosby, on his testimony.
I'm Atrell Nashar in Washington with what we could soon learn from a year-long investigation into the classified documents found at President Biden's office and Delaware home.
The Department of Justice is expected to release details from a year-long investigation into classified documents found at President Biden's D.C. office and Delaware home. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar has a look at what this report might tell us.
It's been more than a year since a marathon of discoveries that former President Trump, former Vice President Pence, and President Biden possessed classified government documents. In the coming days, a new report is expected to share details of an investigation into the roughly 24 classified documents found at President Biden's Wilmington, Delaware home and Washington office.
The extraordinary circumstances here require the appointment of a special counsel for this matter.
Special counsel Robert Hur, a U.S. attorney nominated by then President Trump in 2017, is not expected to seek criminal charges, but what's revealed could hurt President Biden's image during an election year. Former U.S. Attorney John Fishwick.
According to reports, there are also going to be photographs of these documents that show them potentially kept in a haphazard way. And obviously, that was very damaging to former President Trump.
After hordes of documents were discovered at Mar-a-Lago, eventually leading to criminal charges for the former president brought by special counsel Jack Smith, President Biden said this.
How that could possibly happen. How anyone could be that irresponsible.
Then and now, scrutiny of how the two presidents responded once the documents were discovered. Trump faces 8 charges related to obstructing Smith's investigation, while the White House has long maintained Biden cooperated with Hur's investigation.
One advantage of these special prosecutors and the report from Mr. Hur is folks will be able to compare the two situations and make a decision for themselves.
Fishwick says the release of Hur's report likely won't be the end.
I fully expect Congress to bring Mr. Hur to Capitol Hill and have him explain his report. And not just President Biden, but other individuals who touched these documents, who knew about these documents. Is there potential criminal exposure to them? Time will tell.
Another focus for Congress, tighten laws and protocols so classified documents never get out in the first place. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atra El-Nashar reporting.
After the break, former Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby convicted on 1 count in her federal mortgage fraud trial. What one expert says could come next for her ex-husband.
As many crime trends improve around the country, one area is going in the opposite direction in big cities. I'm Kayla Gaskins in Washington with a look at that straight ahead.
Ms. Mosby, how do you feel about this split verdict?
Leave alone.
Ms. Mosby, are you happy with the decision to take the stand?
No comment. No comment. No comment. No comment. You've done enough. Thank you.
Former Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby staying silent yesterday after being found guilty of 1 count of mortgage fraud. We just learned last hour she is set to be sentenced May 23rd for that count, plus 2 counts of perjury from her first federal trial.
Throughout the trial, Mosby's defense team tried to convince the jury her ex-husband, City Council President Nick Mosby, hid financial information from her for years, and she didn't knowingly lie on any mortgage application.
Today, Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost pushed the City Council President on his testimony during this trial. She joins us live with his answers. Mackenzie.
Yeah, Mary Kai, there are a lot of questions for Baltimore City Council President Nick Mosby right now. First, he has yet to file for re-election, but arguably the bigger question is what could come next for him. During this trial, Nick Mosby was called to testify on behalf of the defense, and while he was a witness, prosecutors alleged that Nick Mosby committed perjury multiple times on previous tax forms. During his testimony, Nick also admitted to lying to the people of Baltimore when he was asked during a news conference near the end of 2020 about that $45,000 tax lien that was placed on his home in Baltimore. He said that it had been taken care of when in fact it had not. So after the Board of Estimates meeting today, which Nick Mosby does chair, we pressed him on what could potentially come next for him and his message for the people of Baltimore.
If I could go back in time and change things, I'm not saying I'm a perfect person. I made that mistake, and we're going to move forward. So obviously the voters will have a chance to determine if what I have put forth to date in my record of service, if that speaks volumes in this upcoming election.
Are you concerned about what this means for you personally in terms of the possibility of potential charges now that what you've said on the stand?
Yeah, no, not at all. I have been transparent with this process the entire time. I mean, when the federal government came into City Hall and did what they did to publicly announce this investigation, I sat down with them at that time. Every time that they reached out, I sat down and I was willing to take the stand and be very transparent about what is taking place and where we are. Again, I don't think I didn't expect personal taxes to rise to the level of 3 years long of investigation into every aspect of my life and where we are, but it did. It's about time to move forward. I'm glad that, this is somewhat behind us. It's been here for 3 years, right when I took office, and I look forward to continue to push forward. I think the key thing is I've showed up every single day, whether it's the Board of Estimates, whether it's City Council President presiding over the council, through a tremendous amount of adversity, and I'll continue to do so.
So right now it looks like the City Council President does plan to file for re-election and to seek re-election, but again, he has not yet filed his paperwork. He has until Friday night at 9 o'clock to do so. We're live tonight. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. Well, Fox 45 News first learned about the tax lien on the Mosby's home more than 3 years ago in October of 2020. We pressed Nick Mosby on that lien several times. He repeatedly denied its existence.
Quick, you've denied the existence of your tax lien on your property multiple times.
I have not multiple times.
Can you say that this is the actual lien on your property?
You can talk to my attorney. No, Tom, there's no lien placed on my home right now. There was never a lien on my property. This is not a lien on the property. There was never a lien that was rendered on my property. There is no lien on my property. There's never been a lien on my property. It's not a lien on my property. I don't have a property lien.
During our last hour, attorney Jeremy Eldridge, who's not affiliated with the case, we talked with him about what could come next for Nick Mosby after he admitted that he lied to the media about the tax liens on his home.
Well, you definitely saw a Jekyll and Hyde approach by the City Council President from how he testified on direct examination at trial when Marilyn's own lawyers asked him question, and then his sort of flippant attitude on cross-examination. Now we seem back to a more contrite posture publicly. But what the question you have to be asking is even if he declares for office, is he going to make it to the election, or is the U.S. Attorney's Office, in light of his co-conspirator relationship in Marilyn's now guilty finding of defrauding the government or lying to her mortgage vendor, is he going to be prosecuted? And that's the real thing that's still sitting out there.
Fox 45 News will follow all the developments surrounding Marilyn Mosby's federal convictions and keep you updated every step of the way.
And you can find all of our past reporting and any updates to come on our website, foxbaltimore.com. And be sure to download the Fox 45 mobile app to be sure you don't miss any breaking developments.
A troubling Baltimore City crime trend continues to impact 2024 on the heels of more than 11,000 stolen cars in 2023. New data from Baltimore police shows car thefts are still soaring across the city.
In just the first 2 months of the year, at least 757 cars have been stolen here in Baltimore compared to 363 this time last year. That is a 106% increase.
Carjackings are seeing a bit of a decline in Baltimore right now, with the most recent numbers showing a 19% decrease compared to this time last year.
But not every city is seeing this kind of trend. In Washington, D.C., officials say they are seeing the worst carjacking spike in the nation. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins taking a closer look at the problem and why a recent death has some sounding the alarm.
Former Trump official Mike Gill died this week after being shot by a man on a carjacking spree in Washington, D.C. The same suspect also carjacked, shot, and killed 35-year-old Alberto Vasquez Jr. that same day.
From what we've been told, he didn't resist. He gave the guys the keys.
His parents spoke with Sinclair's WJLA.
Never had expectations that I would be having to bury my child over something as senseless as a carjacking.
Carjackings in D.C. up 565% since 2019, one of the worst spikes in the country. Congressman Henry Cuellar carjacked at gunpoint less than a mile from the Capitol last October.
3 guys came out of nowhere and they pointed guns at me.
The Justice Department now vowing to dedicate more resources to the problem. Compared with pre-pandemic numbers, carjackings are up 93% across 10 big cities, tracked by the Council on Criminal Justice. In San Francisco, a carjacker caused this terrifying moment as they drove off a hill. And a dash cam recorded this attempted carjacking in Oakland.
No.
Data shows most carjackings are committed by juveniles. Sergeant Betsy Smith with the National Police Association says that's why carjackings are going up while other types of crime are improving.
And they are not being punished as adults. And of course, if they don't get punished, they're going to keep committing the crimes.
Donald Trump calling D.C. a crime fest and calling for the federal government to take over the city. Meanwhile, in a reversal, D.C. City Council is working on new, tougher on-crime laws. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
Well, those new tough on crime laws are part of the Secure D.C. crime bill, which the D.C. Council voted to advance last night. The comprehensive crime bill aims to reduce homicides, carjackings, and other violent crime, especially among juveniles. To address the increase in carjackings, the bill includes an expanded definition of the crime. Under the new definition, somebody who has their keys taken from them while they are outside or near their car would also count as a carjacking. The legislation is likely to get a final vote in the coming weeks.
Top leaders are reacting after a vote to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas failed last night. The vote failed with 214 in favor, 216 against, including 4 Republicans. Those 4 who defected said Mayorkas' conduct did not rise to the level of an impeachable offense. Meanwhile, Democrats argued Republicans are using the impeachment to score, quote, political points ahead of the 2024 election. House Speaker Mike Johnson says he expects to see another vote happen.
We have a duty and a responsibility to take care of this issue. We have to hold the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security accountable. Mayorkas needs to be held accountable. The Biden administration needs to be held accountable. And we will pass those articles of impeachment. We'll do it on the next round.
Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene also says that she's not backing down and will bring back the resolution to impeach Mayorkas onto the House floor. However, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says Republicans should be focused on other issues facing the country.
What does the impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas have to do with the economy? Nothing. What does the impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas have to do with addressing the affordability issues in the United States of America? Nothing. What does the impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas have to do with fixing our broken immigration system and addressing the challenges at the border? Absolutely nothing.
Yesterday's vote marked the first time since 1876 that a cabinet secretary has faced impeachment charges, and the first time in U.S. history that a sitting secretary has faced an impeachment vote. A Valentine's Day campaign is turning heads. After the break, we look at one animal shelter's New to Your Ex event.
Just when we thought flu season was on the decline, it's ticking up again. I'm Liz Bonus. To help, we have a few flu-fighting foods for you. We'll have it just ahead.
Oh, 'tis the flu season. I'm ready for some warm weather. How about you guys? Well, we have some in the forecast. We also have some rain, and we're going to be tracking a storm system here that's going to be headed our way too. We're going to tell you when that's set to arrive, what it will bring us coming up.